Well wishes, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Potpourri. I'm your host, Janet Barksdale. Today we have with us a very special guest, author Tammie Best. How are you?
I'm good, Miss Janet. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to get into a lot today with you. I mean, you have so many things that you're doing, and it's just amazing, you know, your body of work and all the things that you've overcome. So I definitely want to get into your story. The first thing I definitely want to talk about is your books.
Okay.
You have 3 books, and it seems like writing is just your passion, and you love doing that. Tell me a little bit about your inspiration behind your books, and we're going to talk about the first one, Secret Survivor. Tell me about this one.
Secret Survivor, her story came about, it was my journal. It was where I wrote everything down that had been happening to me that I just didn't feel free enough to tell anybody. All the secrets that I had to keep, things that had happened, things that I had seen and experienced. So it actually was my mead notebook full of everything that I had, every confession that I needed to make. And I would always say, I'm gonna write a book about what y'all doing to me. And this is the product of that.
Okay. So this story is yours.
Yeah.
You know, like so many, you know, out there that don't have names, essentially, that don't want to talk about these things. So, you know, when it comes to telling this story, was there any apprehension when you decided to write the book?
No. By the time the book, it was time to go ahead and write it as a book. I was completely free. God had given me a peace about it. I've become free from the effects. Secret Survivor, her story is telling a story about a girl named Lorraine who is suffering in silence as she's been abused from age 4 into teenage years. And she's pulled up a wall and she's trying to figure out how to find some normalcy, how to be free and safe in an environment where she didn't feel any safety, any protection.
Yes.
And so this book is talking about the things that she endured from age 4 all the way up until she became a teen mother, and then onward what happened after that. So when I wrote it, I was pregnant with when it became a book, I was pregnant with my 3rd child. And I was just tired. I was like, you know what? I'm not taking this another day forward. I'm not going to hold on to this anymore. It's time to let it go. I spoke to my husband. I spoke to God, and this is what the result was. I called my family and said, the time has come. I've written this book. Deal with it. And that was that.
Wow. So that took a lot of courage on your part to step out and do that.
You know, at some point you have to own your freedom. Freedom
Yes.
is free, but if you don't realize that it's free, you just kind of stay back and you don't accept all that comes along with it. But once you own it, you know the truth. God knows the truth. The people who mistreated you know the truth. You're just telling the truth. I didn't write it to hurt anybody, to out anybody, to cause anybody any pain or anything. I wrote it because so many people are suffering in silence. Sexual abuse is an epidemic. It crosses gender boundaries. There's nobody no age group, no culture that's not been affected by it. And so this was my way of helping somebody else who's been going through it or knows someone who's going through it and they just don't know what to do, and to bring awareness. This was my chance to bring awareness.
Okay. Well, that's very important to know. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about it is it something in terms of when you had to filter all these things out of your system and just decided that, okay, it's time for me to live, for me to be free. What was that process like for you, and what was that turning point?
You can say that this played a huge part in my healing, of me seeing Tammie the way that God sees Tammie. As me seeing, you know, the Bible says we're fearfully and wonderfully made in His image. But I had to learn that that is actually true. And so as I wrote down, I cried, tears hit the page. There's some things I just didn't want to share, but I knew that I had to get free. It's like when you're holding on to a secret, I liken it to cancer. If it's in there, if you don't go in there and pull it out, your body is still suffering and you still have that cancerous disease in. But once you start pulling it out, you get that surgery and they start taking it out, now you have a chance to recover. Now you have a chance to go into remission, and now you have a chance to live. And so writing this for me, and as when I write other things, it's a cleansing process for me. That's what I'm thinking. I'm getting more of that grime out, and I'm becoming more and more free. And so, I mean, anybody can come and say, dispute what's in the book or recognize themselves in the book and say, I didn't do that. I know what you did.
Absolutely.
I know what you did. You know what you did. I forgave you. You need to ask God for forgiveness so you could be free too, because you obviously are still tormented if you're going to sit there and lie and say you didn't do what you did.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Well, that's important. Now, I also want to speak with you about the follow-up, Reigning After the Rain.
Mm-hmm.
So with this book, you've written a book, and you've also written a workbook as well to accompany the book.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about this book and what's it getting into, and what was your inspiration behind even doing the workbook?
Okay. Reigning After the Rain, Living Freely After Abuse. Mm-hmm. You know, when I go and do speaking engagements, whether it's at a women's conference, a school, or wherever I'm at, they ask, well, what steps did you take? How do you get past the guilt, the hurt, the shame, the pain? And what do you mean you need to forgive? And how does forgiveness and freedom go hand in hand? So that's where Reigning After the Rain, Living Freely After Abuse came in. It was first that one. Okay. And it talked about the different feelings that people go through when they've been abused, of any type of abuse. You start feeling guilty. So you're like, it's my fault that this happened. No, it isn't. It is not your fault that you were abused. It's not your fault that somebody came, your boyfriend or significant other punched you in your face. It's not your fault. It doesn't matter if you were wearing a shirt down to your waist and a skirt up to your neck.
Yes.
Would I say that's appropriate dress? No, but it does not warrant you being abused or mistreated. And so Reigning After the Rain, Living Freely After Abuse talks about the steps that you feel, the emotions you feel, like guilt, hurt, shame, pain, and how to get to freedom. And so then I thought, well, we just discussed what you go through, the emotions you go through. Now let's talk about how to get past it. So if you noticed in the workbook, you have forgiveness and freedom highlighted, because when you forgive, you get to a place of freedom. The forgiveness, you hear this all the time, but until you actually get there, you realize that it's really true. Forgiveness is not so that they can get off the hook for what they did.
Right.
Forgiveness is to free your spirit up so that you can live a purposeful life, so that you're not harboring bitterness. Do you know that harboring bitterness and unforgiveness causes weight gain, causes stress, it causes anxiety, it causes a poor self-image? All of this is a result of things that happened to you that you had no control over. So when you get to a place where you say, you know what, I forgive myself for beating up on myself for what has happened to me, I realize that it wasn't my fault. And then you go to the Father and you ask him, how do I get to a place where I could really be free? And he says, forgive. And you're like, I know you know what they did. You were there.
Right.
You saw it. I know you know what the devils did to me. And then he begins to reveal to you that the forgiveness is not for them. It's for you. I had this epiphanal moment, Janet, where I said, okay, I believe in God, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
And his word says to forgive. And he says, with loving kindness, I've drawn you near. Then I thought about this. If forgiveness can keep you from going to heaven, which is where ultimately we all want to go, if I don't forgive, but they go and ask God to forgive them, I get to the pearly gates and they go, well, your name is not here. You don't get to stay here. You're going to hell because I didn't forgive. And I look behind Peter, Paul, and them, and I see my abusers. They're in there rejoicing, partying, hallelujah. And I'm getting ready to go to hell because I didn't forgive you for what you did, but you asked forgiveness.
Right.
Because he said, if you repent and turn from your ways, I'm faithful and just to forgive you and heal you and cleanse your land. They asked for forgiveness. Now I'm on the outside. I have to suffer for eternity now for what you did. Now I lived hell on earth for what you did. Now I have to live hell for real in eternity. So that was what helped me to realize, okay, let me let this go. Let me forgive so that now I can be free. And the moment that I forgave, I stopped having, I'd had nightmares up until I was 26 years old and I'm almost 40. The moment that I forgave Janet, the nightmares stopped. I stopped looking at everybody like they were the boogeyman. I was able to be free. I was able to love my children and hug them and kiss them and not feel like this is inappropriate, because when you're abused, especially as a child, you really are not sure what that good touch and bad touch is.
Right.
You know, we talked about that before, the good touch, the bad touch. And so you'll carry that on, and you will not really love your children, and physical affection becomes difficult because you don't want them to feel like you're touching them inappropriately, when all they really want, all a child really wants, is boundaries. They want to be hugged, kissed, cuddled. They want you to tell them that they're the best that you've ever seen.
Yes.
And funny story, my daughter, I told my son, he was my favorite 5-year-old, and my daughter, who was 8, said, I thought I was your favorite 5-year-old. I said, you were when you were 5. Now you're my favorite 8-year-old.
Yes.
You know? So when I forgave, even when my abusers came to me and they were upset, saying, you know, I'm getting attacked outside, even though you didn't put names in the book, people are assuming that it's me, they're wanting to fight me. And I'm just like, well, you know, you need to ask God to forgive you. I've forgiven you. Because when you get forgiveness from him, then he will cover you in his blood, and you will be safe, and nobody will want to come punch you in your face. They'll see it for what it is. It's
Yes.
a testimony. We overcome by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. So it was when I forgave that I became free. So the workbook is a result of, like in this one, you hear guilt, shame, hurt, pain. And in the workbook, you see guilt less. You see no more pain.
Okay.
You see, and it takes you through exercises that you could do, asking you questions like, why do you really feel like you are to blame? And you write it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll give you a confession of faith and prayers and scriptures to go through, to meditate on, to remind you who you are and of whose you are, so that you could get to a place of freedom and be totally healed. Because we're all here for a purpose and a plan. There are people that you have to reach. There are people that I have to reach. And if we're not spiritually whole, we're no good. We can't reach those people. Somebody's depending on you to get it together so that they can get it together.
That is very true. We all have a purpose.
Yes.
Now, Tammie, we're going to get more into this.
Okay.
When we get back, we're going to talk more about your children and how that has affected you as a mother.
Okay.
Okay? We'll be back with more Potpourri.
It's time to join forces. Get energized and fuel up right. Because starting today, every kid in America has a mission. Bring out the action hero in you. Be part of the greatest action movie ever. The first movie that puts you in the action. Show us how you train and eat like an action hero. Join in at actionheroalliance.com.
Packers. Vikings. Packers. Viking. Packers.
Red state, blue state, vegan,
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live
our families,
united.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
Mom, can we get some ice cream? Please, Mom, please.
No, we're having dinner soon.
Please.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
Welcome back to Potpourri. We are here with author Tammie Best. So, we want to get right back into things, Tammie. And you were telling me about your children and how everything has affected you as a mother. So you have 5 children.
Yes.
Your wife. So tell me about the balance, you know, of your life. You have so many things going on as an author. You have a radio show. I mean, you're doing so much. I would like to know from you, How do you balance all of these things out, as well as how have you prepared your children, knowing what you've come from the abuse? How do you prepare your children and let them know, okay, this is a good touch, this is a bad touch from adults?
Well, my children range from age 25, 21, 8, 11, and 5. So we have 2 sets of children. And I have to say, Miss Janet, that the second set, I was a little bit more prepared than the first set. I was a teen mother, and, you know, there's certain things that come along with that.
Sure.
The thing that helps me most is that I have an excellent support system. My husband is my #1 fan, and he's always encouraging me to go out there and do what I'm purposed to do. So he's very involved in raising the children and what I do. So that's my #1 thing. You know, God, of course, and balanced scheduling. Everything has to be on a schedule. What time we wake up, what time we have meals. During homeschooling, we start at a certain time, we finish at a certain time, no matter what's going on through the day. I take them to activities, and I always help them to be self-aware. Even my older children, they're adults, but my daughter, for example, when you're going out, don't wear your headset because you can't hear what's going on behind you. Somebody could be coming up behind you. If you got your speakers blowing in your ear, you're not alert. To stay alert, you teach the younger children about their body parts. They're called private parts because they are private. Nobody's allowed to touch you in places A, B, C, or D. There's a certain way to interact with people, opposite sex, same sex. There are certain words that people shouldn't use to you. We do not keep secrets. There's nothing good about a secret. You tell your mom and your dad everything. Even the older children, they might tell me things I don't necessarily want to hear.
At this point.
Right. I really don't need to know that. But it's good that they are able to communicate with you. Your children have to be able to communicate with you. And when you discipline your children, they have to know that it is the thing that they did, the behavior that's being corrected that you don't like, but you love them. So those are things that we incorporate when being able to stay on task. And as a writer, I have to make time to write. This is my job. This is what I do. So if I don't write, then you're not going to get the books. You're not going to know what I'm thinking. So I make sure to have time to write. The kids go to bed at a certain time. I switch hats to wifey. I handle that, and then he knows at a certain time I cut that and I go to my writing, and I just make time. I schedule the time in, and my family is good about it. They'll ask me, have you written today? Or the kids might say, let's go over here, mommy's writing. So we all understand what our place is in the family, and we work it from that.
Well, that's beautiful. It seems like everyone's so well connected, like there's a clseness where everyone understands, especially what your roles are. You wear many different hats.
We are Team Best. We're hashtag abuse. We're hashtag Team Best.
I love that. I really do. So I'm glad that you've been able to find that sense of balance, because it's so important, even with many of us who don't have children, or some of us may have 1 or 2. It's a rat race. So for you to be able to do that, it's amazing. So I definitely want to commend you on that.
Thank you. You have to have a schedule. You have to make time for yourself. You have to make sure that even if you have to write a list, if you don't have specific times, write a list of things that you want to accomplish that day, and as you accomplish them, just scratch them off the list. But understand that time can get away from you, and if you do not accomplish what's on the list that day, put that at the top of the list for the next day so that you can maintain and be consistent on what you're doing and not feel overwhelmed. It's very important.
Very
Take
important.
your tea time. I'm not British, but I take out my time for my tea.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Be quiet when I'm having my tea. I need quiet time.
So let's talk about your radio show. I know that's something that you've been doing for a while. What are the topics that you discuss, and also when does your show air?
Real Talk with Tammie. As you can see, I like to talk. So it's called Real Talk with Tammie. We interview from teenage moms to billionaire dads. We talk about bullying, and we talk about sexual abuse. We talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about how to manage your finances. We have authors up there, poets, musicians, rappers, singers. if you have everybody has a story to tell. So if you contact me and you say, I want to tell my story, then I'm going to let you tell your story. Keep in mind, I'm going to ask you those questions, so I need to know, if you're transparent. If you're being honest, then you can be transparent. If you have a bunch of lies around you, you really can't be transparent because you don't remember what you said, because you're lying all the time. So a student can call and say, I really have a topic that I want to talk about. I'm dealing with issues in class, and I want to just have a platform anonymously to talk about it. And we might have a show where people are just calling in talking about their issues. We might talk about being a wife and how you shouldn't be nagging. There's a way to get your point across without nagging. We might have husbands who travel come on and talk about how they feel being away from their family a lot. So there's no one excluded from being on the show. Now, if you're a devil worshiper, I might be like, okay, you need Jesus, but let's talk about how you can get to a place where you have Jesus in your life.
So it's really multidimensional. It's a family-based show. It's not just tailored to any particular demographic.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
When it comes on, typically we have a show on Saturdays from 11 to 12. Sometimes the show runs longer depending on what we're talking about.
Now, another thing I noticed that you have overcome is weight loss. That's been pretty major in your life, and transitioning to a healthier lifestyle. Tell us about that and how that has gotten you to where you are now.
Okay. At my heaviest weight, I was 320 pounds. And when I realized that, I was like, what was going on here? What was I thinking? And I realized that when you suffer abuse on any level, it may be physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, there are certain things that happen and there are certain triggers. And what my trigger was, whenever I would get depressed, and I don't suffer from depression or anxiety anymore, I used to have anxiety attacks that would feel like I'm having a heart attack. And it could be something as simple as a smell that reminded me of something that happened in the past. And so I would cook. Now, I can burn. Sister can burn in the kitchen.
Okay.
And I would eat. Food don't talk back. But it communicates with you, especially when you cook that thing just right, and that macaroni and cheese string and everything. It's like it's telling you, I love you because you cooked me so well, and you're eating it, and it sends a signal to your brain. It makes you feel good, and before you know it, you've packed on the pounds, and there's a whole nother person with you. I finally realized that, I don't want to be called Big Mama by my grandchildren. I went to an amusement park and I could barely fit in the ride, and there were attendants. They were just two of them pushing the bar down, and I felt so embarrassed and humiliated. My self-esteem was so low. I just wanted to crawl into a ball and I didn't want to be seen. I realized that I want to be able to do things with my children, enjoy my children. I want my grandchildren to call me Nunu, because my grandma always rocked the Nunu. Nunu, I didn't want to.
That's cute.
I wanted to be there. I want to live my 120 years. And I had to make the decision to do the right thing for my health. It's selfish for me to let my body keep going down, and then I have a heart attack and my children don't have their children. I never get to meet my grandchildren or anything. And so I made a conscious decision that I'm going to do better. I can control what goes in my mouth, just the same way I can control what I say.
Yes.
So my journey in the last 4 years, I've lost more than 100 pounds. Wow.
Congratulations.
It's not easy. Thank you. It's not easy. You have to work out consistently. You have to realize that you're important. You deserve it. And it's not about vanity. If you're losing weight because you just want to be fine, you're going to gain that weight back.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to gain that weight back. As soon as you get that guy, as soon as you prove that point, the weight is going to come back with a fierceness to it. But when you do it because you want to be healthy, and you know what? I realize being an author and a public speaker, people judge you by your appearance.
Oh, absolutely.
They'll say they don't, but that's
a
lie.
They do.
I mean, when I was at my heaviest weight and I tried to get into different things, people will be like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't really have room for that. But when the weight began to come off, it's like, okay, you're acceptable now. We don't want the fat girl up here. Or I could remember friends saying stuff to me like, when I was single, how you get those numbers and why? Because you're small and I'm not. There's so much that comes along with it. And being healthy, it If your child takes off running, here's another. If your mother and your baby takes off running, what if you're unhealthy, even if you're thin, if you're not healthy, you can't grab your child if they're in danger.
Right.
You understand?
I do.
So there were certain things that made me realize, okay, Tammie, you really need to get it together. You really need to think about yourself, and that's where scheduling comes along, taking time for yourself. It's a choice to exercise for 25 minutes a day. Am I always on it? No. Have I gained some weight back at times? Yes. Do I eat ice cream? Yes. But you have to decide, just like anything else in your life. If you want to be successful, you decide, I'm going to be successful. If you have a book in you you want to write, you decide, I'm going to write this book. If there's a certain thing, a goal that you want to achieve, it first starts in your mind with deciding that this is what you're going to do. And that's what I had to do with my weight. I decided to change the way I was, not for somebody else, for me.
Wow. So what I gather from you is that anything you want to do within is where you want to definitely start first.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any upcoming ventures? You know, anything that's going on, any appearances, any book signings that you have coming up?
I'm working on doing another black tie book release party. I'm working on a children's book for my daughter. I intend to write a children's book for each of my children. I am still doing the radio show. I'm working on a murder mystery. And I'm working on my first screenplay. So there's a lot that I'm doing and trying to do and purposing to do.
Well, that's exciting. Well, Tammie, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. That's all the time we have. I would love to sit here and talk more with you.
Yeah, we could talk. We can roll out. We can talk.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and I'm sure that your story will be an inspiration to someone out there, you know, and everyone, please get the books. You know, you can find them on Amazon,
And
the workbook.
Kindle,
So,
authortbest.com. I'm
Here
on
they
Twitter,
are.
Facebook, Instagram.
yes.
Look for T.E. Best and you'll find me.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today and sharing your story and definitely giving us the information on your books,
Thank you for
because
having
you
me.
are so welcome. And thank you all so much for tuning in to Potpourri. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Matchsticks, matchbox, matching time, matching socks, why you're really special. Match point, match game, not the same. I can tell that you're really special. That is something I can give to make you laugh, to help you. We're a perfect match, and you're really special to me. We're the perfect match, and you're really special to me. Matchsticks, matchbox, matching time, matching socks, why you're really special. Match point, match game, not the same. I can tell that you're really special. That is something I can give to make you laugh, to help you. We're a perfect match, and you're really special to me. We're the perfect match, and you're really special to me.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.